the thing that I think is important about this film is that she's described it as a story, a love story about two people who are the catalyst for change in each other's lives. And firstly, the fact that it's a love story is important because, as you were talking about there, the Bradford trilogy, she's made films in Bradford before, in and around Bradford. And what they've been very good at doing is illustrating, marginalisation and people living at the fringes of the world, with that lovely phrase that she used about ordinary lives, which are not ordinary at all, they are extraordinary. And her films have had a real poetic quality to them, a kind of Brissonian quality, despite the fact that they are also social realist. But that has also involved quite a lot of darkness, and obviously in the case of The Arbor, because that is a story that is filled with a certain degree of darkness. This feels, to me, like a next step evolution. In the same way that Rocks felt like that to me, this feels like somebody being brave enough to make a film about the goodness in people, being brave enough to make a film which is a love story. And I love the fact that Clio Barnard has accessed that part of her creativity through music, because this is it's a drama, and it's got two fantastic performances at the centre of it. I think Claire Rushbrook and Adil Akhtar they embody the characters that they're playing. But what happens is, the setup is fairly straightforward. They have very different lives, and they're both stuck in a situation, and they both need to move on, and they meet through, meeting at the school, and they come from very different communities. And the shorthand that's used for how different they are is, what kind of music do you like? And the music that he likes is dance beats, because he has this DJ thing. And then he says to her in the car, what music do you like? And she says, country. And he says, country? You can't dance to country. And she says, yes, you can. He goes, okay, give me something else. And she says, folk. Yeah. And it's a great scene.
It's almost the end of the relationship. I think he says, that's
it. Just stop the car. You can walk from here. And then there's this brilliant scene that you described, in which ends up with the specials, in which they're listening to their own music on their headphones. So he's listening to play it to the radio, play it, and she's listening to Karen Dalton, and so she's listening to the country. And yet what they're doing is they're both dancing in the same space. And this fascinated me. It reminded me actually of a scene in Summer of '85, the Francois Ozon film, which itself refers back to a scene in La Boum from whenever that film was made.
You've lost me now.
Okay. It's a way of doing something really complicated, but actually making it look really simple. Because what's happening in that scene is there are two different soundtracks going on at the same time, although, alternately, of these two characters from these two different worlds, both dancing in the same space, and then it cuts to this moment of them both going, this is the dawning of, and it's so joyous. And I've watched that scene many times now, looking at it, just thinking, this is so clever. And what's really clever about it is that it doesn't seem clever. It seems organic. There's another scene in which stone-throwing kids are disarmed by the fact that Ali turns the radio up because it's an MC in his track, and suddenly there's this banging tune. All the kids know it, and all the kids start dancing. And
why were they throwing stones anyway? I didn't...
Because he said, "Oh, you don't want to go to Homewood." They throw stones at you.
Obviously, so it was just like an
yeah. And then they do that, and then she say, "Oi, what are you doing?" And then he just turns the radio up on that song, and suddenly they're all dancing to that scene. And what's really clever is that it's like the film has this one foot in social realism, but this other foot in music. And I've said this before, I think that dance is the highest art form, not least because I don't really understand it. And there is something so beautifully poetic about watching a film take flight through music and through dance. And it's a choreographed dance sequence, but it's not choreographed as in artificially choreographed. It's choreographed like this is actually happening in the real. But there are a couple of key sequences in that film, plot point sequences, in which the dance tells you what's happening with the story. So I really, really loved that. I love the fact that it's the central theme of the film for me is about climbing down. It's about climbing down from conflict. And there's the whole central thing about the little girl and the climbing frame. And she can climb up, but she can't climb down. And Ava says, if you're brave enough to climb up, you have to be brave enough to climb down. And one of the things I love about the script is that is almost the throwaway line which tells you what the film is about. If you're brave enough to climb, you have to be brave enough to climb down again. And then I think that the performances are really great. I mean, the thing that Clio Barnard does is she brings out the very best in her actors. And whether it's, people who are screen newcomers or whether it's people who have, years of experience, she gets the best out of them. I think Adil Akhtar is just fantastic as Ali. I think Claire Rushbrook is just terrific as Ava. And together they bring the screen alive. And I'm really enchanted by the film. I'm really enchanted by it. And I do think that there's an evolutionary step forward in being brave enough to make a love story, to make a musical, to make a film that is, as Clive Barnett said, that is basically about kindness.